Earned his bachelor's in liberal studies from the University of the State of New York, master's from California State University Northridge, ultimately got a doctorate from University of Laverne. He is the 33rd sheriff of L.A. County, the first challenger, by the way, to unseat an incumbent in more than 100 years. 34-year veteran of the department, commands the largest sheriff department in the United States with nearly 18 sworn and professional staff. Please welcome back to the program Sheriff Alex Villanueva.
Hi there. Good evening, Larry. How are you doing?
Evening, Sheriff. How are you doing?
I'm busy, but doing all right.
Is it true that, Sheriff, were you to impose this vaccine mandate that up to 30% of your department's 18,000 employees would no longer be available to provide service?
4,100 and change would be automatically, I guess, disqualified and given a pink slip. Right now, I'm already starting to see the early stages of that exodus happening. Workers' compensation claims, early retirements, people transferring to other agencies out of county and out of state. That's 655 in those three groups alone, and that's not counting the people that have 28 years plus that can just walk away and say, I'm fed up with it. I'm out of here. So we're trying to keep them.
Now, Sheriff, you've been essentially ordered to do this by the County Board of Supervisors. Are you telling me you're going to defy them?
Yes, they did a lot of overreach. They did a lot of policies without actually consulting first. And now I have one Supervisor Barger saying, well, we went into talk. Well, how about talking before you pull the trigger? That would really help and to make a good policy decision. But they did the exact opposite. Now you have all the drama.
What are the consequences to you in the event that they mandate that you force your 18,000 employees, whether they want to or not, to get vaccinated?
Well, based on what we're seeing on the numbers, it's not looking good. I could lose a third of my entire sworn workforce. I could lose them overnight. And now how we're going to make up, you cannot make up for that loss. Mm-hmm. That will lead to closures of stations, regional police, sheriff stations instead of the local sheriff station, closure of jails, elimination of detective division entirely. I mean, a lot of bad consequences that you would think a responsible supervisor would say, hey, let's find out what the impact is first before we start making policy decisions. And they refuse to do that.
My guest is L.A. County Sheriff Alex Villanueva. Sheriff, what are the consequences to you personally if you refuse to abide by that order?
Well, to me personally, I'm vaccinated. I support the vaccination. It works, and that is a sound decision for the individual. However, it's a personal medical decision. I don't believe I should force that on my own employees. And I think let each one make their own decision.
Well, that's what I mean. I mean, you've been ordered to do this. If you refuse to do it, what are the consequences to you, to your job, to your pension?
To mine, nothing at all, because they can't do anything about me as an elected official. But I'm only one individual. They have the ability to actually start pulling the pay from county employees, mm-hmm. Basically behind my back. And that's what worries me the most, because these people will be that irresponsible.
Are there any exemptions? Is there a medical exemption? Is there a religious exemption?
They have a medical exemption. They have a religious exemption. So that process is working. However, based on the numbers that have refused to vaccinate, it's going to be way too large to accommodate.
Already, we're seeing crime up in L.A. County, especially in Los Angeles. Violent crime is up. Under this governor, he's overseen the early release of some 18,000 prisoners, many of whom are violent offenders.
Yes, and here at the local level with DA George Gascon, another progressive wonder, he's basically legalizing theft, prostitution, and all kinds of crimes and misdemeanors that is directly impacting driving up our homicide rate, our grand theft auto rate. There's no consequences for these crimes, so it's only encouraging and emboldening that criminal element.
Sheriff, recently the governor signed a bill that essentially says to assistant DAs and judges, you shouldn't put crime enhancements so that bad guys are not punished to the fullest extent of the law. They say it's because a disproportionate number of the bad guys are people of color.
That whole argument about disproportionality is a fake. It's a false narrative, and they've been pushing that agenda for years now, and I got to say, stop that. L.A. County, prime example. 31% of my suspects in custody awaiting trial for murder are African American. And suspiciously, 31% of actually more of my victims are African American as well. So this is black versus black, brown versus brown primarily. It has nothing to do with systemic racism. And when you commit that crime, you're in jail because of the crime you committed, not because there's some scheme or some grand conspiracy against you because of the color of your skin. That is absolute nonsense.
Sheriff, the whole thing sounds insane. I guess what they're really saying is white people need to commit more crime so to make the numbers look better.
Apparently, because they're obsessed with this notion of equity, so maybe we should start releasing people so there's an equity representation in the jail based on the percentage of the population, not because of what they did that would get them into jail. That's a scary thought.
My guest is L.A. County Sheriff Alex Villanueva. Sheriff, I want to talk to you about a few other things going on in the country. As you probably have heard, Minneapolis is essentially voting whether or not they want to defund the police.
I heard that. I heard that proposition. They want to create an office or a Department of Public Safety with an option to maybe hire cops. And they want to hire these specialists that are highly trained to de-escalate. But I've never met these people. What kind of training is that? At the same time, then they're going to decide if we should have a 911 and a police response, which of course is going to be at seconds, minutes, hours too late, and you're going to have some really serious tragedies on the hands of Minneapolis. The voters, hopefully they're smart.
Well, maybe when they call 911, Sheriff, they're going to send out a social worker to tell you about the poor way you were raised and the way the society has been systemically racist against you.
They could do one better. They could send a LA Unified School District climate coach. That would really help that.
Sheriff, Philadelphia has become the first major city to ban cops from making traffic stops for minor violations after the data shows that 72% of their stops were on black drivers.
Again, more nonsense. Timothy McVeigh, Oklahoma City bomber, he was stopped because of a license violation. Imagine what would have happened had that state trooper not stopped Timothy McVeigh. There's reasons why we cover statistics to guard against racial profiling and stuff like that. And by all means, hold people accountable. But that doesn't mean you throw away the vehicle code because you find it inconvenient.
Sheriff, we just have 1 minute left. I want you to comment on Proposition 47. That's the initiative that voters passed that essentially allows someone to steal up to $950, not just a day, but every store without any real consequences. All you've committed is a misdemeanor, no fear of going to jail.
That is a horrendous proposition. And the more we know about the impact of it, every day it's proving how bad it is because it's legalizing all of these crimes. And then you have a district attorney who's not going to even prosecute the misdemeanor version of these crimes. So you got the worst of both worlds coming together. That's why crime is running rampant, especially petty theft, mom and pop shops closing, CVS is closing because they ain't going to not sustain that loss.
Well, Sheriff,
every day.
Sheriff, thank you so much for joining me. Sheriff Alex Villanueva, LA County.
You got it, Larry.
Judge Thomas, you saw